مشاهدينا اهلا وسهلا فيكم بحلقه جديده من البيت انترفيوز. بهالحلقه رح نستضيف فيها الشيف العالمي روي لومبارتي. شيف، سؤالنا الاول لك، باي مرحله من عمرك قررت تصير شيف؟ قد ايه كان عمرك وشو قررت تدرس؟
My name is Roy Lamberty, and let me start by first saying thank you for inviting me to your show. I'm completely honored to be here. So, I am a chef. I have been a chef for the past 31 years. I'm 52 years old, so that's a good portion of my life. But I did not think that I was going to become a chef for my early years. I wanted to become an architect, and I was going to university to become an architect. And 2 years into university, I realized that it wasn't my passion. All right, and I came home and I told my father, I'm leaving engineering school. I'm gonna become a chef. And he said, you're gonna leave engineering school to become a damn cook? I said, no, I'm leaving engineering school to become a damn chef. And I did it, and I never regretted it. But I've been cooking my whole life. I started cooking. My father was at one point a cook, which is one of the reasons why he didn't like the idea that I was going to quit engineering school to become a cook or a chef, because early on in his years he was a cook, and later he moved on to something else. But he wanted me to strive higher than that. But he was cooking from a very at home. When I was young, he was the main cook in the house, and he will cook traditional Puerto Rican food such as roast pork, lechon, and rice with pigeon peas. We have this wonderful thing called alcapurrias, which is only made in Puerto Rico. They're fantastic, and pasteles. And he also made a lot of very ethnic food, like braised pig's feet and fried pig ears. Right, so it's something called gandinga, which is actually gizzards and hearts, chicken gizzards and hearts. It's a stew with potatoes, and it was actually very good. But it doesn't sound good, but it was very good. And also my grandmother was living with us, and my grandmother would teach me how to do all of these traditional Puerto Rican desserts, such as flan and bread pudding, rice pudding, tembleque, which is kind of like a coconut flan. All right, so I was learning to do all of these dishes from both my grandmother and my father. And so it was naturally installed in me. So I mean, by 7, 8 years old, I was already cooking my own meals up in the kitchen. I was making my own breakfast. Scrambled eggs was no problem with me. Making rice by the time I was 9 years old was not a big deal at all. So I've been cooking all my life, but I never thought of it as a career. All right, and one day it just hit me. I should be doing something that I enjoy in life, that I truly enjoy in life, my passion. And that's the advice that I would give to anybody. You should do something that you would do even on your days off, when you're not working. What would you do? Find out what you do when you're not getting paid for it, when nobody's telling you to do it. And whatever you're doing at that time for yourself, find a way to make that your career. And it'll be like you're never at work. It'll be like every day you're just doing what you really enjoy, and it's not work anymore. All right. So right now I am. So let me fill you in on the steps through there. So I became in 1989. I went to culinary school, and I left engineering school. I became a culinary student at that point in 1989, and then I started working for restaurants. Usually upscale restaurants, because my instructor in school told me always start working at the top with people at the top, because once you're in the top, no matter what you're doing, maybe you're peeling the potatoes, you're already in the circle, right? And then you can rise from within the circle. It's easier than rising on the outside and trying to get in it. Nobody's going to let you in later. But if you come in at the bottom, then you can raise yourself up through the top, right? So anyway, his advice to me was to write to the chefs that I admired and tell them that I really admire them. I want to become a part of their kitchen. You don't need to pay me. I'll just come in a couple of days a week for free, peel your potatoes, peel your carrots. And of course, the chefs would get this letter and say, hey, look at this guy wants to work for free. Tell him to come in. And I started working at several very well-known restaurants at the time for free, not getting paid for it, but it was the best thing I ever did. I try to give people today that advice. Nobody takes it. Nobody, they think it's crazy advice, but actually it's the best advice that I can give you. Because what happens is chefs talk to each other. It's a small world. They can say, hey, I'm looking for somebody to work my line. So, oh, I have a guy here who's been working for me for free peeling potatoes, but I think he's ready. And there you go. You're in the circle, right? And then somebody's gonna call him one day and say, I'm looking for a sous chef. Oh, I have somebody for you. And you keep moving up within the circle. You don't have to try to get in. You're already in from the bottom. Okay, so that's some advice I can give you. So I started working in restaurants, and then I moved into hotels, and I started working for very five diamond hotels. I always chose where I was going to work. There was a chef that I really admired. He brought in fusion cooking. His name is Jean-Georges Von, and he brought fusion cooking to the United States, French Asian fusion, to New York City and to the United States. And he was a very innovative, creative mind, and I admired him a lot. And eventually I did work for him also, where it was one of the highlights of my career, because I've always wanted to work for him, and I learned a great deal from him. And his style stuck with me. That fusion style stuck with me. And I continued moving my way up through hotels, eventually going to a private social club that recruited me on Park Avenue in Manhattan. And from there, I saved up enough and I opened up my own restaurant, which lasted for 10 years. It was a Michelin recommended restaurant. It was very welcomed by the local neighborhood. It was a hot spot. It was Asian-inspired French cuisine. Just picture that in your head. Asian-inspired French cuisine. Okay, so we were still cooking with Western methods, but using Asian ingredients. Okay, so if you can get an idea what it is, very unique, and people loved it. And we did very well for 8 years, and then I sold that restaurant because I wanted to find some more time for myself. Running a restaurant, for those of you who have done it, means you are married to that restaurant. You're not leaving that restaurant. You're there constantly. And if you do leave, you better believe that somebody's going to be taking your profits from you. So you have to be there at all times. So I sold the restaurant, and since then I have been working for Marriott Hotels as an executive chef, which is very different from owning your own restaurant. Because owning your own restaurant, my team was, I had 3-4 cooks maximum. And now I run a team of 40 cooks. Before the biggest party I could do, we had 100 seats in the restaurant. Now I'm doing events of 2,000 and multiple events at a time. So it's a different ball game, but because I came up through hotels, I was used to it, so it wasn't that big a leap for me. I had already moved up through hotels, so I was already accustomed to it. Yeah, and my most recent venture was the New York Tea Society, because throughout my career, I started playing with ingredients, with flavors. I try to fuse different cuisines from different styles together. I play around, like I say, French and Asian cuisine, but it's not strictly French and Asian. It's also any other cuisine that I can lump into there. I try to mix flavors that match, right? It doesn't matter where it originated from. If it matches and it makes a good dish, I will do it, right? And there's a lot of dishes that I try that don't work. They never make it on my menu. But the ones that work do. And it's fun to cook that way. My way of thinking about it is, I have a lot of people say, well, why don't you stick to the traditions? And the traditions are great, don't get me wrong. I love the traditional food, and I love to eat it. And when I want a traditional steak au poivre, I want a steak au poivre, the way it was meant to be. But sometimes I want something more creative than that, right? And people tell me, well, that's not the way Escoffier did it. I said, well, for those who don't know Escoffier was the first chef. He wrote the first cookbook. He worked for the kings and queens, and he wrote the first cookbook. So a lot of people try to compare, his recipes and say, well, this is the way it's supposed to be done. But I can guarantee you that if Escoffier was alive today and he had access to mangoes and to strawberries and to coconuts, lemongrass, he would be using them in his mind, because that's what chefs do. Chefs create, right? Chefs don't follow other people's recipes. That's a cook. chefs create. They find new ingredients and they create new foods that have not been done before, and that's what a Schofield would be doing. So that's my view on that point. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who may differ with me, but that's fine. And what else? So the different styles of cuisines, yeah, it doesn't matter. There's no limit. If I find an ingredient I've never seen before I look it up to see what people normally do with it, I will smell it, I will cut it, I will peel it, I will braise it, I will fry it, I'll cook it, and then I'll see how I like to use it. And then I'll make a dish out of it. And then I will go back and look at how do people normally use this item to see if I hit it on the mark or not, right? And if I came up with something different that hasn't been done before, great. And yeah, so now I'm running the New York Tea Society because I found out that tea is a great ingredient. It's full with flavor. I started doing, I think it was in the late 90s, for a magazine that one of my chefs was doing an article for, and they asked him if he cooks with tea, and he wanted to be in the magazine. So I said, yeah, of course we do. So he told me, chef, start preparing some dishes with tea. So I started inventing some dishes with tea. Back then, it was only like the traditional jasmine teas, Earl Grey tea, mint tea, right? Things like that. And I started doing like simple, like fish dishes with broth with tea. And from there, I started realizing that I wanted to learn more about tea because tea is intriguing. Now Lebanese have the black tea that you guys drink. I think you have it almost with every meal. You love your tea also. So I think you understand what I'm saying. Tea is a fantastic ingredient, and I wanted to learn more. So I started taking trips to China to go to the source of it, and it became my new passion. So now I run the New York Tea Society, where we're a group of people who are really into tea. And right now I'm actually drinking tea as I talk to you. This is a Chinese black tea that I'm drinking called Jinjun Mei, and it is fantastic. So that's a little bit about me. Enjoy.
أول شيء أنا بشكركم. أنا شاف عمري هلا 52 سنة ولي أكثر من 31 سنة بهذا المجال. صراحة أهلي ما كان بدهم ياني أعمل شيف، كان بدهم ياني أعمل مهندس. بس من بعد سنين بالجامعة اكتشفت إنه مش هيدا هو هدفي، وقررت صير شيف. جيت لعند بيي وخبرته، قال لي معقول تترك الهندسة لتفوت بهذا الاختصاص، وبالفعل هيدا اللي صار. وما بنسى أبدا أكلات بيي الطيبين من بورتوريكو، كمان ما بنسى أبدا التحلية اللي كانت تعملنا إياها ستي من بورتوريكو. بعمر 7-8 سنين كنت أنا أطبخ لوحدي، بس ما فكرت فيها أبدا إنه هيدي هي تكون مهنتي. فكرت إنه لازم أعمل شيء عن جد أنا أنبسط فيه. بسنة 1989 بلشت أدرس شيف، ورحت بلشت اشتغل بمطاعم معينة. صراحة كنت اشتغل بمطاعم ببلاش، وبلشت اني اجلس هون وبعدين صرت اشر بطاطا. وهذه نصيحتي لكم، انه الانسان لازم يبلش من الدرجة الاولى لبعدين يوصل للقمة. ليه؟ لانه بهيك مطارح الشفيه وقت يحكوا مع بعضهم بيصيروا هن يدلوكم على الطريق. كنت احلى شيء احب اعمله هو اني اعمل فيوجن بالاكل، مثلا الفيوجن ما بين الاكل الاسيوي والاكل الفرنسي. واليوم انا عندي مطعم وعندي اكثر من 40 شخص بيشتغلوا معي. للصراحة بحب اخلط كتير الطعمات مع بعضها، يعني اعمل فيوجن بالطعمات. ما بيهم من وين مصدرها، بس المهم انه تعمل طعمات طيبة. كمان ما بحب الاكل التقليدي، بس بحس انه الاكل هو دايما ابداع. حتى اعظم الشفية بالعالم بحبوا دايما هن يخلقوا شيء جديد. بعرف انه مش الكل يمكن يتفق معي، بس دايما هيدا الخلق والابداع هو اللي بيميز الشيف. واخيرا اكتشفت الشاي انه هو مكون معقول يكون كتير طيب بالاكل، وعملت هذا الشيء وصرت استعمل الشاي باكلاتي كلها الفيوجن اللي انا كنت اعملهم. مثلا بستعمل كتير الشاي بالحامض او الشاي الايرلي جراي. شيف روي، سؤالنا الثاني لك، شو هي المكونات الجديدة اللي اكتشفتها وبتعتبر انه من دونهم ما فيك تكمل بمطبخك؟
The ingredients that I've discovered to use lately is an interesting question because it's not so much what I have discovered as far as more ingredients, it's what I've discovered as of less ingredients. In my cuisine, I try not to mask the natural flavor of food with a lot of other ingredients. I think 3 flavors should be predominantly maximum on the plate. So if I am serving a beef, I want the beef to be the highlight of the plate. If I'm serving filet mignon, I don't want to hide it with a lot of marinades. I want the flavor of the beef to actually pronounce itself, to come out on the plate. And then of course I would have three other flavors that would go well with it. Maybe, if you're going to do a pepper sauce with it, make sure that you use very fresh quality green peppercorns to be highlighted in the sauce to emphasize the flavor of the beef, not to mask the flavor of the beef. Right? So it's not so much what I add to it, it's what I took away from it to make sure that you have the freshest of ingredients. I mean, a lot of people will mask the flavor of ingredients that are not so fresh. When you taste a lot of lemon all over your fish, a lot of times that's somebody masking the fact that the fish is not as fresh as it could be. If a fish is extremely fresh, then all you really need is to cook it correctly. You get some good natural caramelization from a hot pan onto that fish with some light seasoning, salt, pepper, and maybe one other flavor on there that you may like. Maybe you like cumin, so you may sprinkle some cumin on it. And that would be enough with a nice sauce that has some acid in it. That's an acidic sauce, which will highlight the flavors that are naturally on the fish. And a nice vegetable, good, organic, good quality vegetable. I believe the vegetables are much better quality in your area than over here. In the United States, we tend to get a lot of ingredients that are not as flavorful as I have found when I travel other parts of the world. So it's very important here that we get the organic vegetables so that the flavors come out more strong, more natural, more sweet. Because there's a tendency in America over here that where they want a good looking, but they want the tomato to be pristine, to be bright red and glossy, but that may not be the best tasting tomato. An apple has to be bright red, almost like with a shiny coat around the outside, which is actually wax. And then, we don't really want that on our apple. We want a natural apple. So maybe that organic apple is not going to look so picture perfect, but the taste inside will be much better than the apple that has all these coverings on it. So fresh ingredients is what I have found to be the main importance of cooking correctly, is to get the right ingredients to begin with.
سؤال كتير مهم لأنه بمطبخي ما بحب كتير زيد المكونات. اللي اكتشفته أنه يمكن 3 مكونات بس هي تكون تشكل الفرق وتعمل مطبخ كتير رائع. خلينا ناخد اللحمة مثلا. وقت نطبخ اللحمة هي أساس الطعم لازم تكون، مش الصوص والبهارات الكتير اللي بتكون حولها. لازم نعرف أنه وقت تعمل حيلا طبخة تكون الأساس تبعولها هي المكون الأساسي والباقي بيكونوا هن إضافات. ولتكون الطعمات طيبة لازم يكون المكونات كلها طازة، وهون هي الكواليتي الأساسية. خليني أخذ الخضرة مثلا. ما فيك تطبخ إذا الخضرة مش طازة، أو ما فيك تطبخ إذا الخضرة منا أورجانيك. وهون كمان شغلة كتير مهمة إنه تكون كل الخضار طازة وأورجانيك. خليني أخذ التفاحة مثلا. إذا بدنا نشتريها، في ناس كتير بتشوف التفاحة هي الشكل بس ما بيعرفوا إنه هذا الشكل يمكن هو يكون شمع حاطينه، وما تكون التفاحة هي كمان طازة. شيف روي، سؤالنا الثالث لك. مطبخ المستقبل شو لازم يكون فيه، شو لازم يختفي منه؟
What I wish to see more of in the future in kitchens is to go back to the way kitchens were when I started back in the 1980s. A cook started as a dishwasher. A dishwasher would work very hard because he knew the chef was keeping his eye on him. And the chef saw that the dishwasher was working hard on the dishes and he took pride in washing the dishes. Then the chef would go to the dishwasher one day and say, "Hey, why don't you come over here and peel some potatoes for me?" And the dishwasher would be very proud to get that first step out of the dishwashing area and come on the prep area and peel the potatoes for the chef. And if he did good peeling the potatoes and peeling the carrots, next step he will go up to do the salad station. And he was very proud and honored to be doing the salads. And each one of these steps would take at least a year before you went on to the next step. So by the time, you go from dishwasher. By starting as a dishwasher, first off, you value every position in the kitchen. Therefore, you never become an arrogant chef, which is one of the worst things in the kitchen. So as far as what we should have more of in the kitchen is people starting from the beginning. What we should have less of in the kitchen is chefs with arrogance who have not gone through the steps and only with a education in school without experience from the bottom are leading the kitchen, right? Because you should work in every station at least minimum a year. You should work 1 year in the dishwasher or more, 1 year in prepping, a year in the salad station, a year in the saute station, a year on the pasta station, the fish station, the grill station, expediting, 1 year as a saucier, and eventually after 8 years, maybe you become a sous chef. And then sous chef is the workhorse of the kitchen, and you're doing everything that the chef takes credit for doing. And you do that for 8 years, and after 15 years, maybe you become an executive chef, right? And then you can lead a kitchen properly. Then you can tell people what to do because you've done it. You've been there. You've seen it. You appreciate the dishwasher because you were the dishwasher once. And yes, that is the way I started also. And I wish there was more of that. I don't want to make the answer too long, but I'm going to give you a very quick story about somebody who came in and I was interviewing for a sous chef. And a person comes in and I see his resume. He was handed to me from Human Resources, and I look at the resume and I noticed that he had not worked in any restaurant. So I interview him anyway to give him the courtesy just to interview him for a sous chef position. And in the middle of the interview, he asks me, when was I leaving? I said, well, I'm not leaving. Why would I be leaving? He goes, well, am I not applying for the executive chef position? I said, well, no, you're applying for the sous chef position, but actually I'm kind of surprised that you thought that. Why would you think that you're qualified to be an executive chef? He goes, well, I just graduated from culinary school, and they told me there that I would be qualified to become an executive chef. I said, yeah, but you don't have any experience. You've never worked in the kitchen before. He said, oh, no, but they told me I could definitely do the job. So I offered him the position of a prep cook. I said, I will bring you in today as a prep cook, and I think with your training in the school, you will move very quickly through the system, and I think you could become a sous chef in no time at all. And then from there, we could train you to take more leadership roles and managerial roles, and eventually you could become an executive chef. But I don't see that happening today, no. So would you like to come in as a prep cook and you could get the proper training that you need? And he was furious with me. He got up and he threw the papers down and he walked out and called me all kinds of names. But that's what I would like to see less of in the kitchen, is that type of arrogance where you think that you could run a kitchen and you could lead a kitchen and you could produce good food simply coming out of a school without working in the kitchen and coming up through the ranks.
برأيي العودة هي لقبل للأصول. أنا بلشت بسنة 1989 وقتها بلشت شيف. كنت بلشت اجلس هون، بعدين رحت على تقشير البطاطا، من بعدها على محطة السلطة، من بعدها تدرجت لأكثر من 8 سنين لأني صرت كون سو شيف. من بعدها أخذت خبرة كتير كبيرة لأني وصلت إني أصير شيف. شو لازم يكون في مطبخ المستقبل؟ لازم يكون في الاحترام. لازم اللي بيشتغلوا بالمطبخ يتعلموا يحترموا بعضهم، لأنه الشيف اللي ببلش من مرحلة بنقول المراحل وبعدين بيرجع بيكمل بيتعلم احترام الأشخاص اللي هن حده. رح أخبركم شغلة صارت معي. في شخص وصل لي سيفي تابولو من قسم الموارد البشرية وقالوا لي إنه هو بده يكون بالفريق معك. اجى لعندي وخبرته وسألته. فكر هو إنه رح يجي حل محلي، وبقلب الاجتماع بيقول لي أنت إمتى بدك تفل. كان فكره انه هو يجي محلي. بالنهاية اعطيته بوست انه يبلش بمحطة معينة بالمطبخ، بس للأسف هو ما قبل، عصب وفل من الاجتماع. الأساس برأي شيف روي هو الاحترام بالمطبخ. شيف روي، خبرنا عن المطعم اللي ما رح تنساه أبدا بحياتك. خبرنا كمان شو هن الثلاث قصص اللي ممكن تنفقد أبدا من مطبخك، وثلاث قصص ما بتحبها تكون موجودة أبدا.
A restaurant that I would never forget was a very small restaurant. I think it only had about 4 tables inside, if that many. And one of the tables always had the owner sitting in it, so maybe 3 tables for customers. It was a Colombian restaurant. And the owner was the cook. She led the kitchen. She was the hostess. She greeted the customers. She was the server. She would bring the food to you. She would ask you, she would tell you what you were eating actually. She wouldn't give you a menu. She would tell you, this is what we have today. We have our fresh red snapper. We have yuca. And that's what's on the menu today. And you would gratefully say, okay, bring me some, because you knew that whatever she was going to bring you was from the heart. She cooked from the heart, which I'll go back to my grandmother. My grandmother always said the main ingredient in any recipe is love. If you don't cook it with love, it's going to be noticeable in the food. And throughout my career, I have noticed that cooks who come in just to collect a paycheck and they cook the food, it is obvious when you eat their food that there was no love in there. There was no passion in it. It was just the techniques. You know, they put the food on the pan, they heated it up, they put it on the plate, and there was nothing else. There was no love. And it's noticeable when it's not there. And this restaurant had that all over it. It had this lady's love all over every piece of food that came to you on that plate. It was not fancy. It was not huge. It was not big, but the food was made with love. I liked it so much that I had moved away from that neighborhood. This was in Queens when I was living in Queens. And I moved away to Pennsylvania, which is about a 2-hour drive away. And I can remember one day saying, you know what, I'm in the mood to eat at Su Casa. And I got in my car and I drove 2 hours to get there to eat a plate of rice and beans with a pork chop, ate my dinner, and drove back up 2 hours to come back home. Why? Because the food was made with love. 3 things that I would always want in my kitchen. I need passionate cooks in my kitchen. I must have passionate cooks in my kitchen. Like I said before, if the cooks are coming in just for a paycheck, I can't have that. When I'm hiring people, when I'm hiring cooks, the first thing that I look for is the passion, because I can take a person with low skill and train them to be a great cook if they have the passion for cooking. But I can't take a person with no passion for cooking and make him a good cook. He's going to hate his job. He's going to come in every day just looking at the clock, and the food is not going to come out good. No matter how well you train them, the food simply won't come out good. So I need passionate cooks. I need a culinary hierarchy. By that I mean cooks must respect their sous chefs. Sous chefs must respect their executive chefs, and it has to go in order. The chef should never be questioned when it comes to a food item. We're not talking about life decisions. We're talking about creating food in the kitchen. If the chef says to cook longer, then your answer should be yes, chef. For the first, I think, 8 years of my career, the only thing I ever said in the kitchen was yes, chef. So I need that. I need a culinary hierarchy. And the third thing I need in my kitchen is quality ingredients. If you don't start with quality ingredients, the food will never be as good as you want it to be. You can mask, poor ingredients. You can make them better, yes, but they'll never be great. If you start with a good steak, quick story. A lot of people ask me, how come my steak at home never tastes the way it tastes in the restaurant? And the first thing I tell them is always, well, what type of meat are you buying? Where are you buying your meat from? They tell me they're buying it at the supermarket. I can tell them, well, that's your first problem right there. You're getting a choice meat instead of you're getting select meat instead of getting top choice or prime. In restaurants, usually we use prime meat, and that's why the steak tastes so much better than the select. It's the grade of beef, right? So if you start off with a good piece of meat, even at home you can make it taste good. But if you start off with a poor piece of meat, even in the greatest, fanciest kitchen, it's still going to be tough. You're not going to make it tender because you have a great kitchen. You need a good quality ingredients. Those are the 3 things I want in my kitchen at all times. 3 things that I can do without in the kitchen. Let's go back to the personnel. I can't have arrogant cooks in the kitchen. A quick story about that one. I had a sous chef at one point, and this was after I had already gone through the ranks already. I had been about 8-9 years into my career, and I wanted to work in this kitchen with this famous chef, which I talked about previously. His name was Jean George, and I wanted to work in that kitchen, and I got hired in that kitchen. and he had a bunch of sous chefs, but a lot of his sous chefs had arrogant attitudes. And one time, one of the sous chefs came to me and told me I was making a horseradish cream, and I finished making the horseradish cream, and she tasted it and said, do this again." I said, "Okay, what would you like me to do different?" She said, "Just do it again." I said, "Okay, I will do it again, but what would you like me different? Because as far as I know, I did it correctly. I want to do it the right way, so just tell me what I did wrong so I can do it better. But if you tell me to do it again, you're going to end up with the same product and you're going to get upset again. So what do you want me to do differently this time?" And she got upset with me and said, "Do it again because I told you to do it again." And that type of leadership in the kitchen, I don't like. I mean, if you're going to teach somebody how to cook, teach them how to cook. Don't make them do things just because you want to show you're superior to them. That I don't like. Another thing I could do without women in the kitchen, this is going to sound funny, a microwave. I don't need a microwave in the kitchen. Microwaves are for reheating food at home late night. You want to reheat something, that's fine. But in a professional kitchen, there's no need for a microwave. Let's keep it out of there. And if you do get one and put it in there, I can guarantee you the cooks will use it when you're not looking. So why have it there at all? No microwaves.
المطعم اللي ما رح انساه ابدا هو كان مطعم كولومبي صغير، كان عنده بس 4 طاولات، المالك كان يقعد على طاوله يبقى للعالم بس 3 طاولات يقعدوا عليهم، بس كان يطبخ المالك هو كان بنفس الوقت الشيف، كان يطبخ للناس اللي عنده بحب، كان المكون الاساسي عنده الحب. وستي كمان كانت تقول مش المهم المصاري بالاكل، المهم انك تطبخ بشغف وبحب. صراحه مرات كثيره كنت اترك كل شغلي وسوق ساعتين لاوصل على هذا المطعم، فهذا هو المطعم اللي ما بنساه ابدا. الثلاث مكونات اللي بحبهم يكونوا دائما بمطبخي، اول شيء يكون في شغف، لانه بلا شغف ما فيك تعمل اكلات طيبه. اثنين، الاحترام بين فريق العمل بالمطبخ، لانه هذا الاحترام اكيد بيؤدي للتعاون. وثلاثه، اهم شيء نوعيه المكونات، لانه نوعيه المكونات بتاثر على الطعمه. اما الثلاث قصص اللي ما بحبهم يكونوا موجودين بالمطبخ ابدا هن الناس اللي شايفين حالهم واللي بيحبوا يشتغلوا بالمطبخ. اثنين، القيادة المتسلطة بالمطبخ من الشيف للسو شيف وغيرهم، واللي صار معي بخبرتي بحياتي كان خير دليل على هذا الموضوع. وثلاثة، ما بحب الميكروويف، لأنه الميكروويف بيضرب دايما الطعمة. شيف روي، سؤالنا الخامس لك، هل عندك أي معلومات عن المطبخ اللبناني؟ وهل في نكهات معينة بتحبها بالمنطقة؟
Lebanese cuisine is not something that I'm very familiar with, although I've never been to Lebanon, and I'm not very familiar with Lebanese food, but I do know that I enjoy it the few times that I have had it, and there are many ingredients in Lebanese cooking that I do enjoy. I think just one ingredient in particular that sticks out in my mind would be chickpeas. I love chickpeas in many ways, and I know Lebanese use them in many ways, such as hummus and falafels. And I know there's a spicy chickpea thing that you do that tastes fantastic, right? So I'm not extremely familiar with Lebanese food, but the ones that I've had, I have enjoyed very much. So I probably should learn more about Lebanese cuisine. Maybe I'll take a trip out there and experience it personally one day.
المطبخ اللبناني بعرف اني كثير انبسطت وقت اكلت من هذا المطبخ. ما بعرف شو هن المكونات بالتحديد، بتذكر التشيك بيز او الحمص والفلافل، والمرات اللي اكلت فيها كانت مرات بتذكر انه كان الاكل كتير طيب. يمكن بيوم من الايام سافر وارجع اكل من هالاكلات الطيبه. شيف روي، سؤالنا السادس لك، المطبخ الراقي او الهوت كويزين قد ايه صعب بهالمرحله هذه اللي هي مرحله كوفيد 19؟ وبرايك خدمه الدليفري اثرت على تجربه التذوق او الذواقه وقتها كانت الناس تروح على المطاعم؟
This COVID-19 pandemic has changed everybody's world around, including the culinary world. And it is sad. I personally have not worked since March, and I'm taking this is about 4 months later. I've been out of work for about 4 or 5 months, and I'm not due to go back until October. So, and we don't. That's not even guaranteed. So, this pandemic has been terrible because it's taken a lot of cooks out of the workforce, and I'm an optimist. So I'm going to say that this may turn out to be a good thing in the long run, because one thing I have been doing is while I am at home, I've been experimenting with a lot of different foods. So I'm coming up with new recipes and making a little list of new creative dishes that I'm going to put on my menu when I go back to work. So maybe that's a good thing that's going to come out of this. A lot of chefs have a lot of extra time on their hands now at home where they can create some new dishes to excite the public when the COVID-19 goes back. I know that takeout only is necessary in these times. I understand that. I understand the need for it. But is takeout ever going to compare to dining in at a restaurant? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's not the same thing. There's two different things in the culinary world as a consumer. There is eating food, and there is dining, right? And they are two distinct, different things. I'm not saying I don't eat takeout. I eat takeout sometimes when I'm in a rush and I need to eat, right? Because I get hungry. I may have been working for 14 hours straight and I didn't get a chance to eat, which sounds ridiculous because I work in the kitchen and it's ridiculous that I don't eat. But sometimes you get so busy and your adrenaline's up and you don't eat. And you come home and you're driving the car and realize, oh my God, I haven't eaten today. So yeah, I'll pull into a fast food place and get some takeout. I've done it, right? But that's because I'm hungry and I need to eat. But that does not compare with dining out, which is a social experience. It's an event, right? You go out, you dine out, you spend 3 hours there. You get yourself a nice bottle of wine, you pair it with a nice steak or a fish, and you sit there for a few hours. You enjoy your first appetizer, you talk, you have conversation, you create friendships, you create bonds. Takeout does not compare to dining in and never will. So I understand it's necessary in these times, but it is a sad necessity. And I hope that the public doesn't get too used to it and make that their main way of dining out, because that would be tragic. We need that moment to slow down, to sit down at a table and enjoy your meal.
الكوفيد 19 غير حياة كل العالم، حتى للشفية اللي هن بالمطابخ. أنا مثلا إلي من قدر ما عم بشتغل، وهلا يمكن لتشرين الأول لأرجع إني أرجع على المطبخ وأقدر أشتغل. بس هذه الفترة كانت فترة مهمة لإلي لأني أجرب طعمات جديدة، أجرب مكونات جديدة، وأقدر أطلع بأطباق كتير جديدة. وهذا من الأمور الإيجابية اللي يمكن حصلت بفترة الكوفيد 19 خلت الشفية يكون معهم وقت يجربوا أطباق جديدة. إذا بدنا نحكي عن تجربة دليفري مقارنة بتجربة التذوق بالمطعم، هن قصتين مختلفتين كليا. يمكن بالدليفري أنت تطلب الأكل وتاكل، بس بالمطعم هي خبرة مختلفة تماما. يمكن توصل جوعان، تقعد على الطاولة، تطلب أكل. هي يمكن تحدث مع العالم، تقدر تخلق هذه التجربة ما بين التذوق والحديث مع العالم. يعني هي شغلة اجتماعية، معقولة كمان تخلق فيها بوندينج معين. وهذه من الأمور اللي لازم عن جد نرجع نتعود عليها بعد فترة الكوفيد، لأنه هذه الأمور هي تجربة اجتماعية وبتبقى فيها دايما تفاعل مع الآخرين. شيف روي، سؤالنا الأخير، أي وصفة بتحب العالم تتذكرك فيها؟ وهل يا ترى فينا نعلمها للمشاهدين؟
One of the recipes that my signature to me, like I mentioned before, I'm very passionate about tea. And I like to cook with tea now. I've created many dishes using tea. And one of the dishes that stand out is a dish called lapsang souchong braised beef short ribs. So lapsang souchong also is a Chinese tea which is smoked with pine wood. And it has a natural fruitiness of a fruit, of a longan fruit, right? And I take this tea, which is a naturally smoked, it has a smoky, like campfire type smoke in it, and I grind it, and I mix that with other spices, with salt and pepper and cumin. I put in anise, star anise, and cinnamon bark goes in there, and I make a spice, but the predominant flavor being that smoky lapsang souchong tea. And then I use this to rub onto the beef short ribs, and then I put them in a braising pan with all kinds of aromatic vegetables around them, and brown sugar, some brown sugar, some ginger, lemongrass, and water, of course. And I fill it up about a third of the way up, and I cover the roasting pan up, and I let these beef short ribs braise for about 2.5 hours. And when I take it off, the meat is tender. I pull all the bones out, and then I put it back and I let it cool down overnight. The next morning, I can take these short ribs, which are so flavorful and so tender you couldn't imagine, and I can slice them over whatever you want, over mashed potatoes, over rice pilaf. I've served them with almost any side dish that you want, and it'll work with anything. But that's one of my signature dishes. It's lapsang souchong braised beef short ribs, and I wish one day I would have the opportunity to cook it for everyone out there.
الوصفة اللي بحب كل العالم تتذكرني فيها هي وصفة السوشان أو اللبسان سوشان اللي بيعتمد على الشاي كمكون كتير أساسي فيها. وهذه الوصفة تعتمد كمان على نوع كتير كبير من البهارات مثل اليانسون، الكمون، القرفة، الزنجبيل. وهذه البهارات بتكون كتير أساسية مع اللحمة اللي بينزاد لها كمان السكر الأسمر والأكيد المي. بينخلطوا مع بعضهم وبينتركوا لفترة ساعتين ونص وبينتركوا كل الليل. وتاني نهار وقت نوعها بنقوم بنحط هذه اللحمة اللي هي كانت مع البهارات وبنطحن حدا البطاطا المهروسة أو الخضار. وبتكون هذه الوصفة هي الوصفة الأساسية اللي بحب كل العالم تتذكرني فيها. شيف روي، من برنامج من البيت انترفيوز نحن ما نشكرك لمشاركتك القيمة معنا. وانتم مشاهدينا وما نقول لكم انتبهوا لحالكم، أكيد الله معكم.
See, it just wasn't hot enough before. There you go. That's the way it is. Pour it, pour it.
Right here. Wow.
That's the way it goes.
Fireworks.